Hi, my name is Dan, and I'm from Sacramento, California. The event I'm going to describe, I think, probably happened when I was about 10 or 11. It was a while ago. It was a Cub Scout or Boy Scout weekend camping trip. I don't remember which it was, but it was some sort of scouting camping trip. It was kind of a regional event. There were, probably six or seven different Boy Scout troops from around the region, Northern California, that came to this campsite for the weekend for a weekend camping trip. I'd say there's probably about 10 to 30 boys per troop. Some had maybe a few more, some a few less. And then each had chaperones. So probably all in all, there's about 150 kids kind of at this camping trip. So the big event at this camping trip was this relay race. Now, it wasn't an athletic relay race like you'd see in a track and field track meet or anything like that. But it was basically a relay race to test the various skills that Boy Scouts are supposed to learn at their troop meetings. Things like knot tying, first aid, health care in general, survival techniques, starting a fire, stuff of that nature, kind of outdoorsy nature stuff for the most part. So anyway, for this relay race, the boys were split up into about teams of 4 or 5 kids. They were all with your own troop. We didn't mix the troops because it was kind of a troop competition sort of thing. And there were maybe like 10 stations, each focusing on different skills. Each station had a scoutmaster that was kind of the person who was observing the kids doing the skill or asking the questions about first aid or something like that. And then the scoutmaster would kind of sign off and give you a number of points based on your performance, and then you'd move on to the next station and just try and do as many stations as you could in this. I think it was probably about an hour and a half time limit. So, for example, at the knot tying station, each boy had to tie a series of 5 knots. If everyone in the team was able to tie all the knots, then the team would get 5 points. If they could only muster 4, then they'd get 4 points, and on down the line. Some of the stations were timed, so we went to this log cutting station where we had to basically saw off about a 1-inch thing off of a log, and of course most of the kids haven't really used a saw very much, so that was kind of fun. And you had to basically do it in try and get the least amount of time as possible. And then there was some knowledge stations, like you were given points based on how much you knew about dehydration or altitude sickness. The scoutmaster would ask questions about these things, and you'd have to kind of answer. So obviously the idea was to rack up both as many points as you can and get the least amount of time to complete some of the time stations. And there was, the incentives to, when you won first, second, or third place overall. I don't really remember what they were, but they were there. Now, being 10 or 11, obviously all the boys were pretty young. So, there was 10 stations, each focusing on different skill or knowledge area. And obviously, we hadn't been exposed to all of these different things. So, for example, my team was pretty good at knots. We got 4 out of the 5 knots correctly. And then the 1 knot that we didn't know, the scoutmaster showed us how to do. But then we didn't know anything about the physical signs of dehydration or altitude sickness. We just hadn't talked about it in our troop meetings at all. So the scoutmaster, we didn't score anything, but the scoutmaster basically showed us or told us what kind of signs we needed to watch out for when we're out on a hike or something and think we might be getting dehydrated. So basically the stations, turned from competition stations into learning stations, and that's kind of where the learning part came in, and that it kind of made it a lot of fun. Another cool aspect about these stations were that, for example, at the knot tying station, all the boys had to tie all the knots, but you got to kind of communicate amongst yourselves to kind of show all the other boys how to do the knots if they didn't know how to do them. So between, the 4 or 5 of us, we were able to get most of the knots. And again, with some of the knowledge things, like, for example, CPR, we were able to work as a team to kind of demonstrate how proper CPR was done. And so even at the time, even being that young, I remember thinking what a cool idea this was to kind of learn in kind of a real setting, and it was a lot more fun than troop meetings, which in my opinion were always fairly dull. So it was a lot more fun. So looking back on it, there were quite a few things that I thought made this relay race fun. Obviously, there was the competition involved of trying to beat the other boys from the other troops, There was also the competition involved in trying to beat the other boys in your own troop. I mean, each of the teams was only 4 or 5 kids, and we had about 20 kids with us from our troop who went on this camping trip. So obviously there's a little inter-troop rivalry kind of going on, and it was all good fun. Also, you got to kind of show off what you knew when you knew a particular skill pretty well, which, for example, for our team on knot tying, I mean, we felt pretty good with ourselves that we were able to get most of the knots, and kind of enhances your confidence in that particular skill area. Then, of course, there was working as a team, which is always more fun, I think, in any kind of game or competition. That's what makes party games, for example, so much fun, is because you're working on a team with other people, and you just have a good time doing it. The setting, I thought, also made it quite a bit of fun. It was this basically large, open, grassy area with lots of trees. I mean, it was this gigantic Boy Scout campground, and so boys were running all over the grounds trying to get to the different stations to try and do things as fast as they could, and it was just a lot of fun that way. So I guess I've always thought that this relay was just kind of a really fun and kind of creative way to sort of both learn what you already knew and kind of reinforce it, as well as to get exposed to new learning experiences. And it's always fun getting exposed to new learning experiences, and when it can be something that's in such a fun kind of manner, I think it kind of sticks with you just a little bit longer than sitting in a classroom lecture or a troop meeting, for example, and learning how to do all this kind of stuff. It's just getting that fun aspect in there really kind of helps cement some of the learning aspects.